So this is my top 5, and it's the first basketball green list I've done so far this season. These are the 5 people, and I use the word people, not players, under the most pressure in the second half of this NBA season. At number 5, I'll put Anthony Davis because, of course, he is. We all saw it last year. Anthony Davis is basically in every other game force, but he played well enough, and LeBron played well enough to get that Laker team out of the play-in all the way to the conference final. Can Anthony Davis be a consistent force for the Lakers down the stretch and into the playoffs? If so, they can make a run. All eyes are always on AD. At number 4, I'm going to put Zion. I don't know how much attention you're paying to what they're doing in New Orleans, but they are legitimately good. Do you know how many playoff games Zion Williamson has played in his career? None. The last postseason he took part in was March Madness. Is Zion ready to actually, for the first time in his NBA career, put a team on his back and make New Orleans a team worth watching? At number 3, I'm going to put Jason Tatum for exactly the reason we were just talking about. Tatum is talking about wanting to be the face of the NBA. The Celtics are championship or bust. You win the whole thing, and then Jason Tatum, maybe you are the biggest star in the sport. You lose somewhere along the line, your coach probably gets fired, and the questions get louder than ever in Boston. At number 2, let's talk about Kevin Durant. We mentioned this yesterday. Durant talking about his leadership style. At the end of the day, Kevin Durant needs to cement his legacy. 1 championship outside of Golden State. He might be in the right place to do it. He might have the right teammates around him to do it. Legg said yesterday 1 title in Phoenix would equal at least the 2 that he got at Golden State. There's all the pressure in the world on KD. But at number 1, it's not a player. It's Doc Rivers. You step out of the broadcast booth under the circumstances that he did and go to the sideline in Milwaukee. We've all seen how badly it has started. Now, that will be long since forgotten if it finishes strong. But if this thing goes sideways, if Milwaukee, after the enormous acquisition of Dame and the midseason coaching change, if this thing goes badly, I don't think the blame goes to Giannis. I'm not even sure the blame goes to Dame unless he plays really badly. I think the blame will go to Doc Rivers. And so there you have it, the 5 people. Legs, come on back in here. The 5 people in the NBA under the most pressure as we head down this stretch. Anthony Davis, Zion, Jason Tatum, KD, Doc Rivers. Wendy is with us this morning as well. Talk to me.
For the most part, I love the list. I think there is one major omission on this list, and you alluded to it, but you went in a different direction. I agree that Doc Rivers belongs in this. Damian Lillard absolutely belongs in there because of his track record historically. Being in Portland all those years, never coming close to a final. The day you got paired up with Giannis Antetokounmpo, you expect to win a championship this year. Now, it doesn't mean it's going to be a failure because they've got more years going forward. But in this season, it would be a failure. This is the best opportunity he's had. He's finally on a team where he's not the best player. He's got to rise to the occasion. He's got to be great. He's got to be better than he's been so far for the Bucks, by the way. He's had moments. It hasn't been the consistent level of excellence. Look, part of that is because he's working out this new rhythm with a guy that casts that kind of a shadow. I get it. It's not easy, and there's a coaching change. All that's true. Bottom line is Damian Lillard went there for a reason. He's going to have to deliver. So I think Lillard belongs on that list. I think Paul George also potentially could have been on that list.
So Paul George was number 6. We were talking about him at length. And when Hembo and I were putting the list together, Wendy, we basically decided we're only going to put 1 person per team on the list. And we chose Doc over Dame because, as you said, Dame and Giannis, we think, will have other chances together. Doc, the circumstances of this, look, Doc Rivers can do whatever he wants to do. If he wanted to leave the broadcast after that short a period of time and go, God bless him. I'm not sitting here ripping him for doing it. However, it's going to look awful bad. And we've seen, JJ's comments, all the stuff that has surrounded that. If that thing goes sideways, Wendy, I think it is going to stick to Doc as much as it sticks to anybody.
Well, it depends, Greeny. Do they lose in the first round to a play-in team like they did last year to the Heat? Do they go 7 games with the Celtics, who are a superior team, and then lose? Do they get up in a series, which has happened with Doc repeatedly in his coaching career, and then blow it? It just depends. I think with the complete team that the Celtics are, the Bucks are underdogs. I don't care if Red Auerbach was their coach. It would take a lot of them to get to the finals or some fortune. I will go back to when the Dame Lillard trade happened. The day it happened, I said, but where is Drew Holiday going? The advances that they made in that trade were nullified largely by Holiday going to their opponent. You can't forget that. Yes, Doc Rivers has got to get this team in shape. This 3-7 start is not acceptable, but there's a whole lot that's got to happen between now and then before we can really evaluate it.
Let's go to number 2. Talk to me about the pressure on Kevin Durant for this to be the time with this team, with this supporting cast, this group in Phoenix, particularly Devin Booker.
No doubt about it, and particularly with all just the negative attention that Kevin Durant has garnered because of the situations he's been in and the failures of those teams. Everything's lined up for him. Like, this could end up being such a prolific offense. It can overcome any defensive deficiencies that this group might have. That's how good these 3 guys have been together when they're on the floor. It's really actually mind-boggling how good their offense has been when they all play. Beal out again last night. So if they ever get a sustained stretch, we'll see. This team is good enough to win the Western Conference on paper. They have enough to do it. Kevin Durant's going to have to be the guy to get them through those big moments in those big series against other star players.
You know, you're just making me think about it. Because if you look at the Western Conference contenders right now, Wendy, you've got the Clippers. They look good enough.
Yeah.
You've got the Mavericks. They look good enough. You got the Suns. They look good enough. Who will be the last man standing?
And the Nuggets.
But I'm saying from the ill-fated Brooklyn trio.
Oh, gotcha.
The Nuggets are the best team, clearly.
Right.
The Nuggets, forget about the Nuggets.
Gotcha.
They're the best team. But I'm saying from the ill-fated trio in Brooklyn, who's the last man standing this year? Is it Durant with his Suns? Is it Kyrie with his Mavericks? Or is it Harden with his Clippers?
That's a fascinating question. I will tell you that right now, only one of them is in the play-in. And right now, after last night with the Mavericks beating the Suns, Durant is in the play-in. And, it's hard to evaluate the Suns because they've had so many injuries. But if they're in the play-in and they got to deal with LeBron and Steph in that potential situation just to get into the playoffs and then not have home court, that's a tough road to hoe there. I think the Suns really will be more evaluated next year when they can build this team up. But Kyrie has got to be happy with his situation, and James Harden's happy with his.
So, Stephen A., we've been talking about, LeBron and Steph, and you and I were together last year as we saw LeBron make that run from the play-in all the way to the Western Conference Finals. As you watch these two teams right now, if I told you one of them is going to make that run this year, Steph or LeBron, which one would you tell me it's going to be?
For me, it's Steph Curry and the Golden State Warriors. I know that you look at the Los Angeles Lakers, particularly considering their run last year to the Western Conference Finals. But Tim Legler, I'm going to say what I've been saying all year long. They can't shoot, and I can't rely on their shooting. Certainly, I can rely on the greatness of LeBron James. There's no doubt about that, and the greatness of Anthony Davis. And let's give Anthony Davis a lot of love because durability has been a question mark where he was averaging 28 missed games a year over the previous 4 years. This year, he's barely missed any games. I give him a lot of love and a lot of credit for that. And yes, I did lose my bet to Shannon Sharp. I owe him a dinner because he bet me that Anthony Davis wouldn't be missing games this year, and he's won the bet. But still in all, they're not the Golden State Warriors. I understand that double overtime loss they had against LeBron James several weeks ago when Steph dropped 46, but it still wasn't good enough. But I'm looking at the greatness of Steph Curry. I'm looking at the fact that they've been 9-3 since Draymond Green has come back from his suspension. I'm looking at the pace of play, how that's elevated. Pajinski, you pointed that out earlier in Get Up, Legs, where they're moving the basketball significantly better with him on the court as opposed to Klay Thompson. And if you go back to the years when they were very, very successful, even though it wasn't that long ago, it wasn't just their sniper-like shooting that we applauded. It was their ball movement along with their defensive prowess. And then you see a guy like Kuminga, who's a young thoroughbred and a skywalker. You know what he can do athletically. You didn't have that before. To have that athleticism, to have the savviness and the knowledge and the efficiency of a Pajinski, with Steph Curry still looking like a superstar, with Draymond Green playing the best basketball I've seen him play over the last few years, to be quite honest with you, and with this inherent belief that I have that Klay Thompson will answer the call. Remember, guys, he might be shooting 41% from the field. He's shooting 37% from three-point range. Those are career worst. Tim Legler, you know this just as well as I do. There's at least 27 or 28 teams that would crave for a shooter shooting 37% from three-point range. So a bad year for Klay Thompson would be a decent year, if not a good year, for most teams with somebody at that position. I think as the season progresses, they only get more efficient, they only get more fluid, they only get more better, not worse. And I would go with the Golden State Warriors. I have no problem saying that.
What do you think, Legs?
I'm always going to give the Warriors a pulse, always. I'm never going to bury them as long as they have Steph Curry, because I'm never going to put anything past what he's capable of doing. My answer to this question, Stephen A., was that it's a coin toss, but I'd lean Lakers if I had to pick between these two teams. And here's why. I still think the one thing with Golden State that does rear itself, despite how well they're playing offensively, they are too small at times. And I think defensively it's an issue. It's also an issue securing important rebounds when they have to have it late in the game. You're going to need some size to make a legitimate run at this thing in the Western Conference. And that is where the Lakers, and the physical stature of a LeBron, of an Anthony Davis, the way that they can control their positions, just because of how big they are, how strong they are, how athletic they are, it's a different element than what the Golden State Warriors have. So, look, I don't know necessarily that either of these teams is going to get out of, say, a first-round series. I don't know that either of them are capable of it. But if I had to really put money on it this year, I probably would lean toward the Lakers because of LeBron and AD and just the physical size that they represent.
Stephen A., I want to show you something else. Go ahead, Steve.
I don't have a problem with what what Legs is saying, Greeny. Only this is the only problem that I'll challenge him on, Wendy, or anybody else. They keep forgetting this. See, we look at offense, we look at defense, we compartmentalize those two things, and in the same breath, we look at the size of a LeBron James and an Anthony Davis. I get that. You know what? If we're gonna bring that up, why not bring up age? Why not bring up the fact that J.J. Redick comes on First Take and wants to educate the world with his cerebral brilliance, okay? When he's talking about spacing and pace of play and how you have to cover more of the court now than you ever did in the past. Well, last time I checked, as Father Time comes creeping up on you. Remember, LeBron James's hairline is just is fading just as much as mine. You know, I'm 56. That brother's in his 30s. He ain't reached 40 yet, but my hairline's about the same as his. I got some little, thinness up top, just like he does, okay? Father Time is creeping up on us. And so when you look at it from that perspective, and you look at the fact that you look at Podziemski and you look at Kuminga, and the fact that Steve Kerr has those bodies available to them, you're talking about being in a position to push the ball up the floor, increase pace of play, making you run more, being more efficient offensively. Bottom line, from long range, don't get me started with their free throw shooting. You take all of those things into consideration. That puts more pressure, not just on an opposing defense, but on an opposing offense to be even more efficient, because you can't afford to make mistakes. Otherwise, Golden State will make you pay. People keep forgetting that. I don't.